Listen, I know bats are a bit of a controversial topic at the moment, but at least I'm not that tasty. Whew, thank God I could get this off. I tell you what, they don't say it's hard to wear bat masks for nothing. Look at that! I've literally got a nose line from, like, that mask. Hello fans for the Wheelchair Gang, Tom here, and today I just wanted to talk about my hopes for the Batman 2021. I haven't really come up with a cool intro for this series, so that's just how I'm going to announce it. Now, the Batman 2021 is a movie that I've hotly been anticipating, essentially ever since it's been announced. Obviously, I was following it when it was originally supposed to be a Ben Affleck movie, and then when, obviously, Robert Pattinson was brought onto the project, I was even more excited, mainly because it was kind of distancing itself from the dumpster fire that I believe is the DCEU. This is not to say, like, you're wrong for liking the DCEU, it's just that, to me personally, it was just kind of doomed from about Batman vs Superman. I was also excited because we haven't really had an excellent Batman movie, in my opinion, since about The Dark Knight in 2008, unless you count, like, the animated movies, which I'm not counting. I'm talking specifically live-action movies. I don't think we've had a truly excellent one since The Dark Knight. So today I just wanted to talk about my hopes for this future film. Now, obviously, this is entirely subjective. If your hopes are completely different to mine, then that's up to you. I'm not your mum. So my first hope for this movie is for Batman to use his detective skills. Now, this has kind of been confirmed already within press rounds and stuff like that. I think Matt Reeves already said Batman will be using his detective skills more in this movie than in prior ones, and thank God for that. It's honestly so surprising to me that one of the Batman's main aliases is the world's greatest detective, and we've never actually really properly seen him use his detective skills. Sure, there's been moments, for example, in The Dark Knight, where he uses the bullet and he makes a new wall out of the bullet, and there's like 5 minutes of him at a computer in Batman vs Superman, but beyond that, realistically, there's not an awful lot of detective work within the Batman franchise. So I'm really glad that that's been brought to the forefront for this movie. Obviously it's the first point because it's already kind of been confirmed by the production team. The second thing is that I want less of a focus on realism and a more stylized comic booky style. Now, I'm so glad that we're getting rid of the bat tanks. I despise bat tanks. It's a Batmobile, not a bat tank. It's supposed to be a car, so I'm so glad that we've actually got a car this time round. But my favourite Batman movie, thus far anyway, is Batman 1989, and the reason I love that movie so much, well, one of the reasons anyway, is that I love its style. I love its look. I love that it kind of just looks like a comic book in itself. And that's something that, as great as the Dark Knight trilogy are, they didn't really have that. They tried to do that thing where they tried to convince us that it was in the real world, and in the end I just think it makes the sort of world of Gotham a little bit less interesting if you're just trying to make it look like New York. I think it was actually filmed in New York, but yeah, I feel like it's more interesting when something looks really stylized and comic booky and over-exaggerated like the Batman 89 movie did. To be fair, Dark Knight isn't the only culprit for the realism take, but it was kind of the one that popularized it, because after that, every superhero movie was dark and realistic. The Amazing Spider-Man franchise fell victim to this, the X-Men movies started getting darker, etc, etc. So I'm glad that we're sort of moving away from that, or we appear to be, with like a proper Batmobile and a more 80s style. I'm just hoping that it's more comic booky than realistic, or realistic in inverted quotes, because realistically, if that bat tank from the Dark Knight trilogy actually existed, it would be the most horrendous battle vehicle in history. Like, how is it supposed to get uphill? Like, I'm just asking. Number 3. Focus on making a good story before setting up future films. This was a major issue I had with the DCEU right out the gate, was that rather than, really focus on their movies and make really solid movies, they were more focused on setting up the next 5 to try and compete with Marvel Studios' MCU. And we saw kind of the same thing with the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy towards the end, where the Amazing Spider-Man 2 pretty much existed to set up future movies with the introduction of the Rhino, the Goblin, and Electro. It all felt like it was supposed to set up more things that never came. Plus there was that vault of rejected villains that never saw the light of day again. I just hope that there's inevitably going to be sequels to this movie. That's pretty much a given. I can see this movie being a massive success. If it's not, I would be massively surprised. But before you think about sequels, make sure that the film you've got is of good quality first. I don't want to get into this and like, with the second movie, we're all just dreading it and waiting for like a reboot to happen again. Because that's kind of what happened with Ben Affleck's version. As much as Ben Affleck, I think, did excellent with what he was given, you can't deny the fact that the films he starred in weren't exactly the strongest. Number 4, don't have a love interest if it's not necessary to the plot. As much as I love the 89 film, one of my key issues with it is that Kim Basinger's Vicky Vale really only exists to scream at stuff. So I feel like if you're going to have a love interest for Batman, have her actually be a proactive protagonist in a similar fashion to Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy in the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, which is ironic because I was just dogging on the Amazing Spider-Man franchise for copying The Dark Knight. But to be fair, that is one thing about the superhero movie that the Amazing Spider-Man franchise got right, was that they actually had the love interest be proactive in her own right rather than just kind of exist to scream. Number 5 is bring back Danny Elfman, or at least bring back his main score. In my opinion, you'll never get a more iconic Batman theme than Danny Elfman's original score for the 89 film. I just don't think it's possible. Why do you think they brought it back in Justice League? Make sure that theme is in there. It's just part of Batman's movie DNA at this point, kind of similar to the 60s Batman theme. It's just forever iconic to me, so I want that in the movie in some fashion. Whether it will be or not remains to be seen, but I hope it is. Number 6, do not, I repeat, do not make Batman kill. For the love of all things holy, do not make Batman kill. I don't know how many times you want me to say this. Batman isn't supposed to kill. The whole point of his character is that he saw his family get murdered, which you should know. Christ, you've made us sit through it often enough. And he wants to get back at the criminal underbelly of Gotham for putting him through what he had to go through as a kid to make sure that no other person should have to go through that in Gotham. So then to have him murdering henchmen in Batman vs Superman just kind of showed a fundamental misunderstanding of the character to me. I'm all for taking Batman in new directions. I think that's part of the reason he survived for so long. But at the end of the day, not killing is like his core philosophy. It would be like if all of a sudden Spider-Man just completely went irresponsible and saw no remorse and was kind of glorified for it. It's like, no, that's fundamentally misunderstanding the character. Number 7 is utilise more of Batman's villains and side characters. Now, this point is especially true for villains, because ever since The Dark Knight came out and was a huge success, we've kind of been suffering with what I like to call Joker saturation, where we're getting so much Joker content that it feels like he's basically the entire Rogues Gallery at this point. So I'm hoping that these films going forward, not just the 2021 film, but the trilogy, the presumed trilogy going forward, will focus more on other villains that we haven't really seen as much, rather than, hey, it's the Joker, you know, he's the big one that they're building up to. I hope they don't do that. Obviously, the Batman 2021 film seems to be going in the right direction, because I believe they've cast a Catwoman, a Riddler, and a Penguin. That's all a great sign, because it shows that they're willing to do multiple villains in one story, which can be done well. Spider-Man 3 just kind of didn't, because Sam Raimi didn't even want one of the villains in there, which I'm not blaming Sam Raimi for, I'm blaming the studio for that. Number 8 is don't be afraid to let Batman make mistakes. This is something that baffled me about the Dark Knight trilogy at times, because it feels like he's never in the wrong. It feels like he's always in the right all the time, and I understand that he's a hero, he is supposed to be in the right, I get that. But one of the things that makes Batman so compelling is that he's literally a man amongst gods. That's kind of the whole point, is that he is a mortal man who, through his own ability, can hold his own against literal gods. So having him be this perfect guy, to me, kind of removes some of the uniqueness of the character, so I want to see him make mistakes in this movie, especially because it's an early movie as well, and he's not really a seasoned Batman yet. He's not really used to how this whole crime-fighting gig works, so I want to see him make some more mistakes. And finally, and this is kind of the most important thing, just let the creative team do their thing. Like, I feel like part of the problem with the DCEU's inconsistency is the fact that they picked a guy who, in my opinion, Zack Snyder, wasn't the right fit for an entire cinematic universe. For one-off films, sure, but I feel like if you want to do a comic book universe, there has to be an element of levity and kind of lightheartedness to the whole thing, whereas Zack Snyder's not really known for that. But in this case, I feel like they've chosen the right creatives in Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson. Just let them do their thing at the end of the day. I mean, it worked great for Todd Phillips and Joker, so just let them do their thing with this movie. Don't tamper with it too much. Don't force them to put things in they don't want to. Kind of like what I was talking about with the Spider-Man 3 thing, and you'll have a good film on your hands. And that about wraps it up for this video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to give it a like, comment down below your thoughts on the Batman 2021, and I'll see you later.